Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Urmisha World. Today in this session I'm going to explore on this data types in Python. So many of you have a questions that what exactly this data types is, why it's so important, is there any built-in data types in Python, and what it all depends on if any of the operation to be performed on. So many of that have a question. So let's address that in much more in detail. So first of all, what exactly this data types is? So data types is means the term itself define that what exactly the type of data it has. So let's say you are having a variable, and in a previous session we learned a lot about the variables itself. So in that, uh, when a variable is being assigned with any value, it could be a string, it could be a numeric, and within that numeric could be a floating value, could be an integer value, could be something in a complex value. So anything could be possible, and when you assign any value to the variable, that when you perform any operation on that variable, then it's actually on the data. So it's really important that what type of data is, and on that basis you can perform certain operation. You cannot run every other thing. So that is why we need to understand what exactly the type of this data is. So let's see with an example to get more understanding of it. Let's say if I want to add two numbers, 20 plus 30, and now run this cell, you'll get it 50. And if you see, this is the plus operator, which is exactly work as something for the summation, that is for addition and all. But let's say if I want to have two string variables, let's say an apple plus mango, let's say, and now run this cell, it will give you apple mango in the terms of concatenation. So this is what exactly the difference is. The plus operator here works as for concatenation and here works as for the summation. It all depends on what type of data it is, and on that what kind of an operation you are performing. So here I want to add, here also I want to add, but here, as because of the data type is a string, which is not in numeric, it is going to concatenate, it could be append, I would say. So this is what the difference its whole. So it depends on the type of data. Let's say now if I want to add any string value, let's say tiger, and now I want to say 20, sorry, it's in 20 numbers, and now run the cell, it will give you a type error. A type error means is something that you want to concatenate, because as the first is a string and the next one is the integer, and you want to add. So as because of two different type of data, you cannot perform the same operation. So initially what I saw, that if the data types are same, you can perform the summation or its concatenation, but depends exactly on the basis of what type of data it holds. So this is what the importance of the data type. Does not matter whether you perform directly or you give it with a variable. So if I do the same operation which giving a variable, that's what we saw in the previous session, that how we assign a variable. Let's say a is equal to 10, and b is equal to 30, okay, 130, let's say. And now I want to perform this a plus b, which is exactly perform as that of the summation. So let's see that it will work as 140. Yeah, it's match whether you perform directly with the data or with the variables. So that what's my point here is, that if you perform this, whatever the value is assigned to the variable, on the top you perform any operation, then because on the basis of this data and its type, what exactly the type is, you can perform the operation. So that is come a barrier itself. So this is all about the data types and why is so important. So I give it in whole what the reason is and how you can do that. But this is all about that we are understanding. But what about that the built-in data types which are Python itself have? So it's not just about the numeric and the string, or someone says a boolean. Boolean as in, let's say I want to say whether this a is greater than b. if I just perform this, if something, so here it will come as a false, because here b variable is 130 value and a is 10. So if I check with this will give it to me a false. So what exactly this is exactly you are performing or giving a condition to your data, that if something, just check it on the basis of this variable, if this is true then get me a true, otherwise it's give you a false. So that's true and false kind of thing is actually exactly it now says it's a boolean. So that is what a boolean. So these are the basics that we always come across. So what about the other data types that is there within Python? So let's see that. So in Python data types, these are the various other data types available. For strings, let's say this is what for str. For the numbers, they have something like if you define in a float or in a complex or in integer. There is also a list, which is like you pass something in a form of list. So that is within the box bracket and you pass the values itself. It's not just a single value, you give multiple values. There is a tuple as well, that there is a difference in brackets, there's a open and close bracket, but there is itself a difference. So tuples as well, which is giving you a sequence variable, so it will be considered in a sequence. List as well in the sequence. There is a dictionary which you want to define any kind of a data frame. So we will see everything in more in detail about this in an individual sessions, because it itself holds a lot of importance here, because as you gradually move towards the Python, the understanding the overall crux of this Python and want to apply something on the data analysis part, then these are the most important things that you need to understand. Then there is a sets, we did in school level about the Venn diagram and all. So that's what, like whether the set consists of these values or not. Then the one which we just now did about the Boolean, true or false, 1 and 0, 0 for the false, 1 is for the true. So there are a lot of these. So what I will do is I will explore, give it a whole concept to be cleared one by one. So today we are going to focus on this numbers. So let's go with that. So let's say I took this an example where x, y, z are the variables, and then I've assigned these different values to it. One is so this something in a decibel, another one is in j. If you don't recall this, then this is something which might be in the school level you have worked on. That is I plus, let's say 1j. So what this I and j stands for? I stands for something which is real, and j stands for something as an imaginary part. So if any numbers which have an imaginary and real part in it with I and j stands with, so that is comes under a complex data. So let's see how you can know that what exactly this data type is. So what I'll do, I'll run this cell now, and now let's check the type of this data. So if I write simply the type, and within this type just give it the variable, let's say x, and now run this cell, it will give me something as an integer. Why? Because this is not in a decimal, not in a points. So we can say that if something which is whole in number, does not matter whether it's a positive or negative, but it's with this, then it is going to give it a integer. So how you can know? This is simply just call this function type, and within the parenthesis pass your variable, or else you can directly pass the value itself. Let's say type 1, and what is the value of x? Let's say if I'm passing 1, so it's also going to give it. So exactly how it decodes, it first decodes what is there in the x part, and whatever the x part is, now what is the type of that part, or you can say type of this value 1. So that's how it performs. Now let's see what is it, the type y. That is in float, because something which is in the decimal, if it's in numeric but still it's in something in decimal, so that is called a float. Now let's see with this z as well. So type, and within the parenthesis pass z, and now run the cell again. This will giving you a complex. As I told you, something with this plus 1j or something, any number could be possible, but something isn't part of I and j. So I stands for as in real, I would say I is equal to real, and sorry, j is equal to image. imaginary part. Okay, so that is called, this is the real part of the data, and this is J stands for the imaginary part. So this is what about the numeric data types. As we saw here, like what are the three different within the numerics. The so in numeric we have mainly something as an integer, float, and complex. This is all three of those data types within this. Oops. If I want to write here something as in one. So, all right. So these are the three different data types within this numeric data type is. Now on the top, I want to see something as in type conversion. Let's say something x is equal to 10.50 and y is equal to minus 30, and now I want to change the type in something is an integer. So I want to change, sorry, it's in float, right? It y x is in float. So how would I check? It's just type and x, and right here it will give you something as in float, right? So now what I want to do is I want to change this in an integer, and I will assign this to something to the z. So I will change here and make it right int, because as I want to forcefully change anything to in a different format. So this is x, so I'll just write here int and x. So whatever the x value, I just want the integer value, and what is now the z is. So this is what all about type conversion, which is also called as typecasting. So typecasting is when you want forcibly or explicitly or implicitly in any way you want to change the type of this data. So you can change it in this way. So run the cell now. Now you will get something in a z in a 10. So it discarded whatever there in the decimal and gives it you the integer part, which is the whole so number with this x. So that is called the type conversion. You can also perform the same. Let's say for z we perform here in this way. Let's say I want to change the float. This y is in float. Let's say I want to take this y in float. So you can also run in this way and get you this something in a float. Remains everything as it is, but after point it will give it to you at 0 here. Now there is one more which says the complex. So how you can change in a complex. So that also we will see. Let's say I want to change this y in a complex. Right here in this way, complex, and run the cell now. You will get something with minus 30 plus 0j. So what the 0j stands for? This is not a part which exactly, but I said as earlier, this is I and j. So anything which is in a number, it will give you in as in real. If you have mentioned something in a j here, then definitely it's gonna take something else. Let's say I give it like minus 30j, and now run this cell, it will give you minus 0 minus 30j. So that's how it all takes for any complex, but it itself isn't complex exactly. So I want to change, let's say in a float, and now run this cell. So it will give you the error, because to change anything in a float, this is a complex, so you cannot run this as forcibly from the complex itself. So that is what about the type conversion or the typecasting, because float would not understand what exactly this j is. So I would say, like, you can convert an interchangeably from int to float, or from int to complex and float to complex, but from complex to float or complex to integer, it's way difficult. You cannot do that as in a reverse order from a complex to the float or to the integer, because this complex itself holds two parts, which is the real part and the imaginary part. Imaginary part is not easy for the float and integer type to understand that. So that is one of the thing. Now let's see one which is on the basis, let's say if you have something in an exponential. So let's say something you have in an exponential, you can see something which is an e in sign, So that is runs for their exponential. So let's see if your variables have such value and what now the type that it holds. So let's run this cell individually for this x. Sorry, it should be x. Now run the cell. It will give you in a float. So this is what, if anything is an exponential, the type of that variable it holds now as an float. If it is y, then what? Something in capital E. You can see the difference is a small a in capital E. Now what about z? And run this cell, it's again going to give you in a float type. So remember this, if anything with an exponential, the by default or anything, the value it will give or considered by Python as in a float. So I hope you like this video. If you really like, then do like, share, and subscribe to my channel. And see you on the next video with on a new data type where we're going to explore in much detail like this, similar to this. Thank you so much for watching. See you on the next one.